Some stories are defined not just by what happens, but who their villain is. A great villain can transform a story, raising the stakes, challenging the party's values, and leaving players with memories that last long after the campaign has ended. But far too often in ttrpgs, villains get reduced to nothing more than stat blocks with a bad guy label slapped on top. They appear, they monologue, and then they're cut down before they ever feel real. What makes a villain memorable isn't just their power level or the treasure they guard, it's how they shape the story. It's the goal they're chasing, the methods they use, and the way they get under the player's skin long before the final battle. The villains that stay with us are the ones who make the players question themselves, who embody more than just evil, and who leave echoes across the world and the people in it. In this video, we'll dig into what really makes a villain stick, and how to tie them to the party in ways that make every confrontation, whether whispered rumours or final showdowns, unforgettable. Hi everyone, it's Chaylee, and a villain isn't memorable just because they're cruel or destructive. What makes them compelling is that they have a goal, something they're striving for that feels real even if it's twisted. A clear goal not only gives the villain direction, it also gives the players something to push against. Without a goal, villains are just shadows to be cut down. With goals, they become a force that defines the story. The best goals are the ones that clash directly with the party's values. Maybe a warlord believes the only path to peace is through absolute unity, no matter how much blood has to be spilled to achieve it. Maybe a necromancer thinks raising the dead is the highest form of compassion, refusing to accept that anyone should have to lose a loved one forever. These goals make sense in their own logic, but they demand choices from the players. Do you stop them at all costs, or do you acknowledge the grain of truth buried inside their madness? When designing a villain, try boiling down their ambition to a single sentence. They want to, followed by one clear outcome. That makes it easier for you to roleplay them, easier for your players to understand them, and far more likely that the villain's presence will ripple through the story in ways that matter. A goal is only half the picture. What really defines a villain is how they choose to pursue it. Method reveals character. Do they inspire loyalty with rousing speeches, or do they dominate through fear and cruelty? Do they manipulate from the shadows, pulling strings that no one even sees, or do they march openly with armies, daring anyone to defy them? The way a villain acts toward others shows not only who they are, but how players will experience them in the world. Think of a tyrant who doesn't just command soldiers, but controls food, shelter, and medicine. Their grip on power isn't only through steel, it's through survival itself, making every decision the players face in that world carry weight. Or imagine a villain who operates like a spider in a web, charming allies, spreading misinformation, and letting others fight their battles until the moment comes to strike. These methods don't just colour the villain's personality, they shape every encounter. When you decide how your villain works to achieve their goal, you're deciding what kind of shadow they cast across your campaign and story, and that shadow is what your players will be fighting against long before they ever draw their swords. A villain shouldn't just walk onto the stage for the final battle and expect to feel important. Their presence needs to be woven into the story long before swords are drawn. That presence can be direct. Maybe they appear in person to taunt the party, strike a deal, or show off their power. Or it can be indirect, with the players constantly running into the echoes of their actions. Sometimes it's whispers in taverns of villages burned to ash. Other times it's an NPC begging for help after the villain's schemes destroyed their home, or a battlefield littered with the aftermath of their ambitions. These moments plant seeds, building an image of someone who's always one step ahead, shaping the world even when they aren't in the room. The key is that every encounter with the villain, or with the shadow of their influence, should remind the players of what is at stake. When they finally meet face to face, it shouldn't feel like they're meeting a stranger. It should feel like they've been chasing this figure for miles, and that the weight of every rumour, every consequence, and every scar in the world has been leading to this moment. Even the darkest villains become more compelling when they feel human. If they're nothing but a simple depiction of evil, the players may cheer when they fall, but they won't carry the weight of that conflict with them. What gives the villain depth is a spark of something recognisable, a value or a flaw or a belief that makes sense, even if it's twisted beyond recognition. That thread of humanity turns them from an obstacle into a mirror. Suddenly fighting them isn't just about swinging swords, it's about confronting an ideology. The battle becomes not just physical, but moral, and the choices the players make feel heavier because of it. Maybe it's the necromancer who believes their work is an act of compassion, giving grieving families one more chance to see their loved ones. Maybe it's a lich who sought immortality not out of selfishness, but out of a desperate need to protect their people, even as their obsession slowly destroyed the very souls they swore to save. When your villain holds on to that single, almost relatable belief, every encounter with them sharpens into a dilemma. Do the players simply cut them down, or do they wrestle with the uncomfortable truth that under different circumstances, this person might not have been their enemy at all? The most memorable villains aren't distant figures ruling from ivory towers. They're the ones who feel personal to the party. A faceless threat might be intimidating, but the weight of the conflict grows exponentially when the villain is tied directly to the heroes themselves. That connection can come from backstories, shared ideals, or even consequences of choices the players have made along the way. Sometimes it's a betrayal. The NPC ally who's been manipulating events in secret, finally revealing their true face at the worst possible moment. Other times it's blood, an estranged sibling, a family member who chose a darker path, or a long-forgotten relative whose ambitions put them at odds with the party's goals. And sometimes it's philosophical. Maybe the villain embodies the opposite of what a character stands for. A lawful zealot who despises the rogue's freedom, or a hedonist who scoffs at the paladin's sense of duty. Consider the impact of a villain who was once a mentor. They taught a PC everything they know, instilled their values, and shaped their worldview, only to become corrupted by power or despair. When the final confrontation arrives, it isn't just a fight against a foe. It's a reckoning with the past, with loyalty, and with identity itself. When villains are woven into the fabric of the party's story, every clash carries emotional weight. Defeating them doesn't just advance the plot, it feels like resolving unfinished business. And that is what turns a dangerous enemy into a legendary one. When the time comes to face the villain, the battle itself should feel like the culmination of everything the players have learned about them. A final fight that's just a slugfest misses the point. Instead, the mechanics, the setting, and the pacing of the encounter should all echo who this villain is and what they stand for. Their combat should be storytelling in motion. Think about the multi-stage encounters that shift as the villain adapts or grows desperate. A warlord might begin the fight surrounded by loyal soldiers, but when the tide turns, they trigger a brutal fallback plan, collapsing the walls around them. A sorcerer obsessed with control might bind the battlefield itself, warping reality into a cage that mirrors their desire for order. These layers don't just make combat harder, they remind the players what the villain believes in. Even the battlefield can carry narrative weight. A corrupted druid might fight in a grove that writhes with poisoned roots, while a necromancer's lair could be lined with the restless dead. both obstacles and a grim reminder of their methods. And of course, unique mechanics drive that point home. A Vampire Lord doesn't simply deal damage. They drain vitality mid-fight, offering enemies the gift of eternal life. Each round becomes a test of will, not just of hit points. When you build villain encounters in this way, every decision feels like a statement. The villain's ideology is right there in the mechanics, forcing the players to push against it, resist it, and finally break it. That way, the victory isn't just another tally on the adventuring record. It feels like the resolution of a story that's been building from the very first encounter. At the heart of every great campaign, villains are not just obstacles to be cut down. They're the mirrors, foils, and catalysts that push your players and their characters to grow. By giving them clear goals, distinct methods, a lasting presence, and a touch of humanity, you can turn them into more than bosses. You turn them into characters worth remembering. And when their stories intersect with the party's, when their choices echo in the world, and their final battle feels like a culmination of everything they stand for, that's when a villain transforms from a stat block into a legend. So now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which villains, whether from your own campaigns or not, have felt the most villainous? If this video resonated with you, please join the Discord, link in the description below, and whilst you're down there, please like the video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell for more deep dives like this. And until next time, may your villains be as unforgettable as the heroes who stand against them.